I'd been driving for hours, a black ribbon of highway stretching endlessly through flat farmland. My phone had long since lost signal, and the gas gauge sank lower with every mile. By the time the warning light came on, I was alone under a sky the color of steel wool, a storm threatening in the distance. That's when I saw it, a flickering neon sign on the horizon. Gas, food, open. Relief washed over me. The building rose out of the dark like a mirage, a squat structure with a single pump island, buzzing lights, and a dusty parking lot. Pulling in, I noticed how quiet it was. No other cars, no sound of insects, no highway noise. Just the faint electric buzz of the sign overhead. The station looked old, maybe abandoned, if not for the glowing open sign taped in the window. The glass door was smudged, its handle greasy, but I pushed inside anyway. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and something else, coppery, metallic. Rows of dusty shelves lined with faded snacks, bottles of soda decades out of style. A ceiling fan turned lazily, though I couldn't feel any breeze. Behind the counter, a man stood. Or rather, he seemed to stand. His skin was pale, almost waxy under the fluorescent light, and his eyes didn't blink. He wore an outdated uniform, red shirt, name tag that had long since faded blank. "Pump's ready," he said in a flat voice, as if I'd asked already. I managed to nod and slid my card across the counter. His hand moved strangely, stiff and jerky when he swiped it. "Fill up, then come back. Got something you'll want." I frowned, unsettled. "What do you mean?" The man didn't answer. He just stared at me until I backed out the door and returned to my car. As the pump clicked on, I glanced around. The fields beyond the lot were dark, no farmhouses, no trees. Just flat emptiness stretching forever. But when I looked back at the gas station windows, I froze. The man wasn't behind the counter anymore. He was standing in the window, staring directly at me. The pump clicked steadily, numbers rolling upward, but I couldn't take my eyes off the glass. The man stood motionless, his pale face pressed close, like he was studying me. The fluorescent light behind him flickered, and for an instant, his features looked wrong, like his mouth was open wider than a mouth should be, or maybe there were too many teeth. But when I blinked, it was gone, just that waxy stare again. My stomach churned. Something told me to leave, gas tank half full or not. But when I tugged at the nozzle to stop pumping, it wouldn't budge. It was locked, frozen in place. My car door wouldn't open either, though I swore I hadn't locked it. I felt suddenly trapped. Then, the gas station lights went out. The whole building fell into darkness. Only the faint neon open sign remained, buzzing weakly in the window. The figure was gone. "Hello," I called, hating how thin my voice sounded in the open air. No answer, just silence. Heavy, unnatural silence, as though the fields themselves were holding their breath. The pump clicked once more, then stopped. I finally managed to yank the nozzle free, shoving it back in its cradle. Heart racing, I decided I wasn't going back inside. I'd get in the car, turn the key, and drive until I hit civilization. But when I tried the driver's side door again, it opened. Relief surged through me. I slid into the seat, turned the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Only then did I glance at the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in my back seat. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around, but the seat was empty. Nothing there. My pulse pounded in my ears. "You're just tired. You've been driving too long," I told myself, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. My headlights cut through the empty road as I pulled out of the lot, but the neon glow in the mirror grew smaller, then vanished. For a while, it was just me and the highway again. But the gas gauge, the one I'd just filled, hadn't moved. It still hovered above empty, blinking red. Then the headlights caught something ahead. Another gas station. Identical. Same flickering neon sign. Same dusty lot. Same squat little building in the middle of nowhere. And standing in the window, that same pale man. My foot hovered over the brake, but instinct screamed, "Don't stop." I pressed harder on the accelerator, flying past the station without daring to glance fully at it. For a split second, though, the pale figure in the window smiled. I didn't see his lips move, but I felt it like a grin that formed directly inside my skull. The road stretched on endlessly, black ribbon cutting through cornfields drowned in shadows. My gas gauge blinked red, mocking me. The car sputtered once, then steadied, as if it were running on something other than fuel. I whispered under my breath, "Just get me out of here. Please, just let me out." But 10 minutes later, headlights revealed the same gas station again. Same cracked sign, same buzzing neon. This time, the man wasn't inside. He stood by the pumps, waiting. I swerved around the lot, tires screeching, but the station dissolved into the fog like smoke. The road became strangely unfamiliar. No signs, no intersections, no markers at all. Just the same 2 lanes, stretching forever forward. Then a voice filled the car. Not from the radio, not from outside, from behind me. "You're running out of time." My whole body went cold. I jerked my head around. The back seat was empty, but the smell of gasoline was thick, choking, as if someone had poured it all over the upholstery. The voice came again, closer this time, right against my ear. "You never should have stopped." I screamed, swerving wildly, barely keeping the car on the road. My hand shook so badly I could barely grip the wheel. The fog was thicker now, pressing against the glass like a living thing. And no matter how far I drove, I knew I wasn't leaving this place. Finally, the car coughed, shuddered, and died. It rolled to a stop in the middle of the highway. Silence fell again, so deep it made my ears ring. The headlights stayed on, illuminating the road ahead. And there it was, the gas station, not 20 feet away. All its lights burned brightly now, as if it had been waiting for me. The man stood in the doorway, no longer pale, but impossibly dark, his features swallowed in shadow. Yet his teeth gleamed, row after row, too many to count, when he tilted his head toward me. And then he raised his hand, curling one long finger, beckoning me inside. I told myself not to get out of the car. Lock the doors. Wait until morning, until something changed. But deep down, I already knew there was no morning coming here. The world outside my windshield wasn't part of any map. It was a trap, and the gas station was its heart. The man didn't move as I sat frozen, staring at him. His fingers stayed lifted, curling toward himself in that silent invitation. The longer I looked, the less he resembled a man at all. His arms seemed too long, his shoulders bent at sharp angles, his head tilting in jerks like a broken puppet. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried the ignition again. Nothing, not even a click. The car was dead metal. When I opened my eyes, the passenger seat wasn't empty anymore. A shape sat there, dripping. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber clung to it like rot. Its face was blurred, like it couldn't decide which features to wear. But its mouth, that smile, was unmistakable. The same one from the window, from the road, from my mind. "Come inside," it whispered, though its lips didn't move. "You've already been waiting." I shoved the door open and stumbled into the road. Cold air wrapped around me like wet cloth, dragging me toward the station. I fought it with every step, but it was like wading against a tide. My feet crunched gravel, closer, closer, until I was standing in front of the glowing doorway. The thing, leaned out just enough that I could see into the station behind him. It wasn't a shop. Not anymore. The shelves were gone, replaced with endless rows of gas pumps, stretching into blackness. Each one had a figure slumped against it, head bowed, faces hidden. I realized with horror they weren't alive. Or if they were, they weren't human anymore. Their skin was waxy, their hands locked around the hoses, pumping endlessly into their mouths, their chests swelling like bloated balloons. The man tilted his head at me. There's always room for one more. The fog pressed at my back. The car was gone. The road was gone. My only choices stood before me. Step inside and join the others, or stay outside and let the fog eat me alive. And maybe those weren't choices at all. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the hiss of a gas pump clicking on and the sound of laughter spilling from the dark rows behind the doorway. Laughter that wasn't his, wasn't theirs but mine. Because somehow, impossibly, I was already inside. It was around 3 in the morning when I pulled off the highway and saw the gas station. The strange part wasn't that it was open, truck stops stay open all night, but that it stood alone in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fields so flat and wide I could see the faint glow of distant towns on the horizon. No signs led to it, no billboards, nothing on a map. It just appeared out of the dark like it had been waiting for me. The building was small, almost old-fashioned. The kind of place where you expected to see hand-painted advertisements for cola in the windows. Its neon sign buzzed weakly. Letters burned out, so the word station flickered, broken. Only the pumps gleamed bright, their digital screens lit as if someone had just walked away from them. I parked under the buzzing lights, left the engine running, and stepped out. Immediately, I noticed something strange. The air smelled too clean. Not like gasoline or rubber from the road, but sharp and metallic, like the air before a lightning storm. Inside, the place looked normal enough at first glance. A few shelves of chips and candy, coolers humming along the far wall. The counter sat under a flickering fluorescent light, and behind it, instead of a cashier, there was a bell with a note. Ring for service. I rang it once. The sound echoed much louder than it should have, bouncing through the aisles like the store was hollow inside. No one came. That's when I saw the second note, taped to the counter. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Please leave exact change. Do not ask for help. At first, I laughed. Some weird prank? Maybe the clerk stepped away. But the longer I stood there, the more I noticed that the shelves weren't quite right. Every bag of chips, every candy bar, every bottle of soda had no brand. Just blank labels. Identical packaging, identical placement, like props on a stage. A chill ran through me. I turned back to the door, suddenly desperate to leave. But through the glass, I saw the pumps still glowing in the dark, brighter now, humming louder than before. And beyond them, across the black fields, a line of pale lights was moving slowly toward the station. They looked like headlights, but there was no road out there. The pale lights in the field moved with a strange rhythm, weaving left and right, never blinking the way headlights should. My first thought was flashlights, maybe a group of hunters or night hikers, but they were too evenly spaced, too synchronized, almost like lanterns carried in a procession. I told myself not to stare, not to wait around for whatever that was to get closer. I pulled on the door to step outside. It didn't budge. The handle rattled uselessly in my hand. I checked the other door on the far side of the shop, then the small restroom door near the cooler. Locked. Everyone. The hum of the pumps grew louder, vibrating through the walls like machinery underground. I pressed my ear against the counter, and I could swear I heard liquid rushing, not just into the pumps outside, but beneath the floor itself, coursing like blood through veins. That's when I saw movement at the counter. The bell I had rung earlier was trembling on its own, shivering as if struck by invisible hands. Then it rang. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound didn't echo this time. It drilled directly into my skull. I backed away, bumping into a shelf. A blank-labeled soda bottle rolled to the floor and burst open. The liquid that spread across the tiles wasn't clear or brown. It was black, thick as tar, and it hissed as though it were boiling. Something knocked on the window. I whipped around. At first, I thought it was one of the lanterns closer now, bobbing right outside the glass. But no, it was a face. Pressed flat against the window, pale skin stretched tight, eyes black and glossy like marbles. Its mouth moved, opening and closing in slow rhythm, and though I couldn't hear words, I knew it was mouthing the same thing over and over. Come out, come out, come out. The lights behind it swayed in unison, dozens now, maybe hundreds, surrounding the station in a wide circle. I stumbled back, but the tar-like liquid had spread across the floor, sticky and bubbling. My shoes sank into it, pulling free with a sickening squelch. The air filled with that metallic smell again, so sharp I gagged. The bell rang again. This time it didn't stop. A continuous, shrill tone that grew higher and higher until the fluorescent light above the counter exploded, showering sparks. And when the sparks cleared, I wasn't alone in the store anymore. Someone was standing behind the counter. The figure behind the counter didn't move at first. It just stood there, half-shadowed, its face hidden beneath the dead fluorescent tube. I thought maybe it was finally the cashier, someone who could explain what was happening. My voice cracked as I tried. Hey, listen, I just need gas. Then I'll go. The figure leaned forward. Not stepped, leaned. Its body bent at an angle that should have snapped its spine. The bell on the counter rattled, then shot into the air, clanging down at my feet. That's when the face came into view. It wasn't human. At least not anymore. Its skin was paper white and stretched too thin, like it had been pressed against glass. The features shifted as if struggling to settle on one identity. Nose sharpening, softening, eyes widening, narrowing, like a slideshow of faces overlaid at once. Every few seconds, one set of lips would form a word before being replaced by another mouth entirely. But all the mouths whispered the same thing in a chorus of voices, male and female, young and old. Pay at the pump. I staggered back, nearly slipping in the black liquid spreading wider across the floor. My reflection in it rippled, but it didn't match me. It smiled, even though my mouth was clamped shut. The windows rattled. The pale faces outside were pressed tighter against the glass. Dozens of them now, maybe hundreds, their lantern-like glow pulsing in sync with the humming pumps. They didn't move like people. They swayed like tall grass in wind that I couldn't feel. The figure behind the counter raised its arm, impossibly long, and pointed one crooked finger toward the door. The locks clicked loudly, one after the other. I understood what it wanted. I was supposed to step outside. The moment I realized that every light in the station cut out at once. The buzzing neon, the humming coolers, even the glow of the pumps, all gone. The only illumination came from the countless pale lights outside, pressing closer against the dark glass. I felt the tar beneath my shoes harden, locking my feet in place. The air was so heavy with that metallic tang, I thought my lungs would burst. And then, in that suffocating darkness, the whisper came again, not from a figure, not from the crowd, but from directly behind my ear. Your turn. I spun around, but there was no one behind me. Just aisles of blank-labeled food, shimmering faintly in the glow of the pale lights outside. Yet the whisper still hung in the air, vibrating in my skull like it had been branded into me. My shoes tore free from the hardened tar with a sick snap, and before I knew it, I was staggering toward the front doors. They were wide open now, swinging slightly though no wind blew. Outside, the faces had pulled back into the circle of lantern glows, leaving the path clear. They were waiting, inviting. The pumps were humming again, brighter than ever, their hoses twitching like snakes. I tried not to look at them as I stepped outside, but out of the corner of my eye I caught something that nearly dropped me to my knees. The black digital screens weren't showing prices or gallons anymore. They were showing names, lines and lines of them, scrolling endlessly upward. And then, clear as day, I saw my own name flicker across one of the screens before vanishing into the stream of others. The ground beneath me vibrated. The humming deepened, and from the circle of lights, figures began to emerge. Not the faceless things pressed to the windows earlier. No, these looked familiar. Faces I knew. Faces I shouldn't be seeing here. My old neighbor, long dead from a car wreck. A teacher I'd had in middle school. My grandfather, all of them pale, their eyes blank, mouths mouthing the same rhythm over and over. Hey, at the pump. The hoses stretched toward me, whipping across the gravel, clicking open and shut as if impatient. I backed up, but the ground seemed to tilt toward them, dragging me closer with every step. I made a desperate break for my car, but it wasn't there anymore. The spot where I'd parked was empty, black gravel stretching into fog. No road, no engine hum, just the station, the circle of lights, and the endless, hungry pumps. The figure from inside the store appeared in the doorway. It didn't walk. It simply blinked from shadow to shadow until it stood a breath away. Dozens of shifting mouths, whispering over one another, until one finally settled. You owe us. Something cold and rubbery wrapped around my wrist. One of the hoses. The nozzle clicked open. I screamed and tried to rip it off, but more whipped out, curling around my legs, my chest, pulling me toward the glowing pumps. The last thing I saw before the world went black was my reflection in the pump screen. Not struggling, not terrified, just smiling, eyes pale and blank, waiting for the next traveler to arrive. The rain had been falling for hours, the kind that drowns the road markings until every lane looks the same. I've been driving through farmland, nothing but black fields and the occasional flash of a fence post in my headlights when the low fuel warning chimed. Normally, I'd push it 10, maybe 20 more miles before worrying. But I hadn't passed another car in over an hour, and the storm was only getting worse. The thought of running out of gas out here made my chest tighten, so when I saw the glow through the curtain of rain, I felt relief. A gas station hunched on the side of the road, its canopy lights casting a pale halo in the downpour. I pulled under the awning, killed the wipers, and just sat there a moment, listening to the drumming rain. The place was old, clearly, faded paint, pumps with cracked plastic screens, a tiny shop with fog windows. But it was open. The lights inside were on, humming faintly through the glass. When I stepped out, I noticed something odd right away. The sound. It was raining hard. I could see it pelting the asphalt beyond the canopy, but here, just a few feet from the downpour, it was silent. No water striking the roof, no drips, no hiss of wet tires. The air was damp, yes, but the rain refused to cross the invisible line where the canopy's shadow ended. I swallowed hard, shoved the nozzle into my tank, and waited. The pump didn't ask for a card, didn't even display a price. The numbers rolled anyway, fuel rushing in though I hadn't touched a button. That was when I heard movement inside the shop. Through the fog glass, a figure walked past the aisle. Just the suggestion of it. A shape, tall and thin, moving slowly, deliberately. I waited for it to appear at the counter, but it never did. It passed again in the opposite direction, and then again. Circling, I tightened my grip on the nozzle. The numbers on the pump spun wildly, climbing higher and higher, gallons far beyond what my tank could hold. The car rocked slightly, metal groaning, as if something heavy inside the tank was shifting. And through the glass, the figure finally stopped walking. It turned. Even blurred, I could tell it was staring directly at me. I pulled the nozzle free, fuel spilling onto the wet concrete. Only, it wasn't fuel. What splattered around my shoes wasn't clear or oily, but thick, dark, and clotted like something bled from the pump. It stank, sweet and metallic, a smell that made my stomach turn. My tank should have been overflowing, but when I leaned down to look, the opening wasn't visible anymore. It was wider, darker, stretching deeper than it should, like the fuel cap had become the mouth of a tunnel. I swore I heard something moving inside, wet and restless, like an animal shifting in a cave. The figure inside the shop hadn't moved. It still stood at the fog glass, still staring. I couldn't make out a face, but the way its head tilted, slow and deliberate, sent a shiver through me. I dropped the nozzle and bolted to my car. The door wouldn't open. The handle clicked uselessly, as if the lock were jammed. I tried the other side, same thing. Windows wouldn't roll down either. My own car had sealed me out. Lightning flashed, illuminating the road. And that's when I realized there was no road anymore. Where asphalt should have stretched away in both directions, there was nothing but black water. Not rain puddles, not flooding water. An endless, glassy surface that reflected the station's pale canopy lights and nothing else. No fields, no sky, no horizon. Just water in every direction. I spun toward the shop. The figure was gone. The door creaked open, though no one had touched it. The faint chime of a bell drifted out, warped and slowed like a tape played at the wrong speed. I should have run into the dark, should have tried to swim, to escape, but the thought of leaving the small island of concrete beneath my feet made my chest seize. The water wasn't just water. I knew that in my bones. So instead, I stepped toward the shop. The bell chimed again when I crossed the threshold. The inside smelled the same as the pumps, metallic sharp like rust soaked in sugar. Shelves stretched in neat rows, but every product had been stripped of labels. White boxes, plain bottles, identical, lifeless. And there at the far end, the figure stood. Not moving, not breathing, its outline faint in the flickering light. Behind it, through a grimy office door, I saw something stranger still. A window that looked out, not onto the lot, not onto the pumps, but onto the black water outside. And in that reflectionless surface, shapes were pressing up against the glass, mouths wide, eyes pale. They weren't trying to get in. They were trying to get out. I froze, staring into the reflectionless water outside the office window. Hundreds of faces pressed against the invisible barrier, pale and distorted, mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Their eyes, empty, black pits, seemed to pierce through me. The figure at the far end of the shop didn't move, but its presence felt heavier, more tangible, like gravity itself had shifted toward it. I realized, with a growing sense of dread, that it wasn't waiting for me. It was feeding. A low hum filled the air, resonating through the walls, the floor, even my bones. The air smelled hotter now, metallic and sweet. I took a cautious step forward, and the figure tilted its head, just enough for me to see a single mouth stretched impossibly wide. No teeth, just blackness. And from that void came a whispering voice that wasn't human. You shouldn't be here, but now you are. Panic seized me. I ran for the door, wrenching at the handle, but it resisted, pulling me back. The shelves behind me seemed to shift, stretching the aisles longer than they should have been, twisting like corridors in a dream. The reflection in the window changed. The water outside rippled, not from wind or rain, but from movement beneath the surface. Shadows slid just below the surface, and then shapes erupted. Limbs, twisted and elongated, broke the waterline, climbing toward the station, toward me. The figure at the end of the shop began to move. Not walking, sliding, gliding just above the floor. Its head snapped in my direction, and I saw my reflection in its black, gaping mouth. My own face, screaming back at me, alive and yet not. I stumbled backward, tripping over one of the blank boxes on the floor. It fell open, revealing not products but small, black, writhing shapes. Tiny faces, mouths open, eyes wide. They scrambled toward me, sticky and cold against my shoes. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the water. The pale faces pressed harder against the invisible barrier. And in that flash, I saw it. The station was no longer alone. Out there, across the black water, dozens of identical stations floated, their lights flickering like stars. Each one held figures just like the one inside, and all of them were staring at me. I understood then. The station wasn't a place. It was a trap, a predator, and every traveler it lured became part of its endless network. A whisper brushed past my ear, soft but insistent. You belong here now. I scrambled backward, but the floor seemed to shift beneath me. The boxes, the aisles, even the counter moved as if the shop itself were breathing. My hands clawed at the door, but the handle twisted and stretched away from me like it was alive, pulling me back into the store. The figure glided closer, silent except for the whispering that now filled the entire room. Hundreds of voices layered over one another. Travelers, wanderers, people like me who had once thought they could leave. Each whispered the same thing. Stay, join us. The water outside the office window surged. Shapes clawed at the surface, limbs stretching impossibly long. I could see their faces now, mine among them, frozen in silent terror, mouth open in an eternal scream. I stumbled toward the office, desperate for any escape, but the glass dissolved under my fingertips, replaced by an endless black void. A cold wind blew from it, carrying voices that weren't my own, chanting, "The station takes, the station feeds." The figure reached out with one impossibly long arm. I tried to run, but the floor was no longer solid. My shoes sank, the shop stretching downward, pulling me toward the black water beyond. Every step I took, the whispers grew louder, pressing against my skull, vibrating my teeth, rattling my bones. I screamed, the sound swallowed instantly by the thick air. Behind me, the shelves cracked open, releasing hundreds of tiny faces, writhing and wriggling toward me. Mouths opening, eyes blank and dark. And then the figure's face aligned with mine. For a heartbeat, I saw not a reflection, not a shadow, but myself, twisted and hollow, grinning. The last thing I remember is being drawn into the water, into the black infinity that now filled the station. Shapes pressed against me, surrounding me, merging with me, until there was no longer a me. The next traveler would come. The rain would pour, and somewhere down the endless highway, the neon sign would flicker, welcoming the lost. The station waits, always,